So I feel like this is a problem that needs to be discussed, because it's becoming more and more common today in Ireland. Uh, Separation. We all know someone who's gone through separation, and unfortunately it is becoming more and more common. 1 in 10 marriages in Ireland today ends in separation. But I'm not here to lecture you on why you need to stay together. I mean, yes, if a marriage is breaking down, it is sad, but you must always keep one thing in mind: the children. My parents have recently separated, and I, like many other children in Ireland, was used as a pawn in their own personal battle. The fighting had been going on for so long that I'd forgotten what the reason was. But the reason is irrelevant. Some nights my dad would start the arguments, and other nights my mum would start them. And the worst thing was, I never knew what to do in those situations. Do I intervene? Do I just let them at it? Most of the time, I just tried to block out the noise by listening to music or playing video games. But that didn't always work. The thing I hated the most was the awkwardness after they had fought and after I'd re-emerged. Because I knew they were fighting, and they knew that I knew they were fighting. And there was just a tension in the air. But they always tried and play along, as if nothing had happened. I always remember one night in particular. My dad had been watching golf, and my mum came in to try and talk to him about my school report. Next thing I knew, they were fighting again. And as the argument became more heated, I just couldn't bear it. My hands started shaking, my head started pounding, and I just lost it. I burst into the sitting room, and I yelled at them to stop. My dad yelled at me, my mom yelled at my dad, and it became a three-way shouting match. Eventually I had enough, so I tried to storm out when my dad followed me. Continued. My dad stormed out the front door. I stormed off into my room, and my mom just went to the kitchen. My dad isn't a bad man. He used to be a building contractor, but he's retired since. He'd always been a good father and a good husband. But then something changed. He just began to seem distant. He barely talked to me. He just seemed to be completely disinterested in me and in my life. That day after the argument, he went walking. I don't know where. I don't know for how long. He just didn't come back. I think he slept in his car that night, because when he came back the next day, it looked like he hadn't slept in years. My mum wasn't a bad woman. She may have been a slight bit overprotective, but then again, what mother isn't? She never talked about her problems, because she didn't like it when people thought she was upset. But again, that day was different. She rang up her best friend, and she just broke down on the phone. I've never heard my mum so upset in all my life. She just talked and cried for hours while her friend comforted her. Obviously, it was affecting my parents, but I feel like I was the one who was being most affected by their arguments. Not just at home, but it was affecting my school, it was affecting my relationship with my friends. My grades at school were absolutely terrible because I couldn't concentrate when I was at home. And I was fighting with my friends because I was constantly in a bad mood. But again, that day, I opened up to my friend. I guess when I think about it, that day was the first time that we all realised we needed help. Once I came home that evening, I researched what we could do. I knew that my parents weren't going to stay together, but I hoped something could be done about the constant fighting. I found a charity in Limerick City called Familes, and they offered counselling to families in my situation. At first it was hard to convince my parents to go, but I managed to persuade them. So I contacted Familes and I made an appointment for us all to go counselling. The following week, we went into the Familes building. We each had separate counselling sessions, as well as a family group session. The counsellor suggested that instead of my parents thinking about themselves when they're fighting, that they think about me and the effect that it's having on me. My dad moved out and I stayed living with my mum. I'd see him every weekend, but he'd always ruin it by asking stupid questions like, who's my mum been talking to, or does she have a boyfriend, or does she talk about him? And of course when I get back into the house, I get the same stupid questions from my mum. So who's in the middle of a separation. Whether you're a child or a parent, please think about what it's doing to everyone else, not just yourself.
Familes, which stands for Families and Men in Life Experiencing Separation, is a support and information group, and their support and information is free. Familes is in Limerick, Waterford and Mallow. Men's meetings are every Monday and Thursday evening, 8 to 10 p.m. Women meet every Wednesday morning from 10 to 11:30 at 291 Father Russell Square, 3 doors to the right of the train station. They offer a wide range of services, including 24-hour confidential phone support, 2 weekly meetings for men and 1 for women, 1-to-1 meetings by appointment, confidential email support, info@familes.ie. For more information, visit the website at www.familes.ie or contact them by phone by calling 087 260 3603.